Picture this: a behemoth of steel and human ambition, slicing through the icy North Atlantic like a bullet fired from the gun of history. The Titanic wasn't just a ship, it was a floating symbol of human vanity wrapped in the illusion of invincibility. But beneath the polished decks and gleaming brass, the Titanic was a powder keg of arrogance waiting to explode. The iceberg? Just the trigger. The real culprit? A cocktail of hubris and greed served on a silver platter. Let's cut through the romance. The Titanic, hailed as unsinkable, was the damned embodiment of overconfidence. Down in the boiler rooms, sweat-drenched men shoveled coal into roaring furnaces, feeding the ship's insatiable hunger for speed. The bigwigs up top were too busy clinking champagne glasses to notice the danger creeping up on them. Captain Smith, a man with a record as spotless as his uniform, was on his swan song voyage before retirement. Did he care about a few ice warnings? Not when the owner, J. Bruce Ismay, was breathing down his neck for a record-breaking crossing. Now, here's where the plot thickens. Ismay, the White Star Line's puppet master, was more concerned with headlines than lifeboats. To him, Titanic's maiden voyage was a PR stunt, not a journey. His tactical maneuver? Sacrifice safety for spectacle. Reduce lifeboats to clear the view. Skimp on binoculars for the lookout crew. Who needs caution when you've got a brand new ship to flaunt? The ship was a pawn in a chess game of profit and prestige, with Ismay and his ilk moving the pieces. And the passengers? Just collateral damage. Enter the iceberg, a silent predator in a frozen sea. But even as it lurked, the Titanic barreled forward. The crew, blinded by orders from on high and lacking proper tools, didn't spot the threat until it was too late. Imagine the scene: a frantic scramble on the bridge, the desperate spin of the wheel, the chilling crunch of ice meeting steel. But this isn't just about a hunk of ice. This is about a chain reaction of human errors, propelled by ego and short-sightedness, sealing the ship's fate long before it sets sail. The aftermath unfolds like a grim ballet. Lifeboats lowered half-empty, panic spreading like wildfire. The Titanic, now a sinking tomb, exposed the underbelly of human nature: greed, arrogance, and fear. It wasn't just an iceberg that sank the Titanic. It was the blind pursuit of glory over safety. The real tragedy? It was all preventable. A few more lifeboats, a little less speed, a touch of humility, simple steps that could have saved lives. Instead, history watched as pride and profit took precedence over human life. And that, dear viewer, is the truth. Peel back the layers, and you'll find the Titanic was a time bomb, ticking away. The iceberg was just a scapegoat for deeper flaws. Let's start with the shipbuilders, the Harland and Wolff Yard in Belfast. They were the craftsmen, the magicians turning dreams into reality. But magic has its price. In the rush to meet deadlines and impress the White Star Line, corners were cut. Steel used in the Titanic's hull had a dirty secret. It was brittle in cold waters, prone to snapping like a twig under pressure. A flaw that lay hidden until it was too late. Then, picture the boardroom of White Star Line, where decisions were made by men in suits, far removed from the icy Atlantic. These were the power players, driven by a singular motive: profit. They had a reputation to uphold, and the Titanic was their golden ticket. But gold tarnishes when greed blinds judgment. They opted for speed over safety, ignoring ice warnings from other ships. Their tactical maneuver? Push the Titanic to her limits, damn the consequences. It was a high-stakes gamble with lives on the line, a game they thought they couldn't lose. Now, focus on the Titanic's crew. Understaffed and underprepared, they were the last line of defense. Murdoch, the officer on duty, was handed a poisoned chalice: navigate a ship too fast with too few eyes on the sea. The crew's flaw? Over-reliance on technology. The wireless room, meant for passengers' luxury, became a lifeline ignored. Ice warnings were treated like pesky flies, swatted away rather than heeded. The bridge was a stage, and the players were caught in a tragic dance of miscommunication and misplaced trust. Now let's hit the lifeboats. A glaring symbol of human error and arrogance. There were only enough for half the passengers. Why? Because lifeboats cluttered the deck, and the ship was unsinkable. Remember? The lifeboat drill scheduled for the day of the disaster was cancelled, likely deemed unnecessary by those with misplaced confidence. When the panic hit, the crew was ill-prepared. Lifeboats were launched half-empty, a chilling testament to the hubris that infected every level of command on the Titanic. It was a death sentence signed by those who believed they were above the laws of nature. Finally, let's not forget the passengers. They were the pawns in this deadly game. Wealthy, complacent, lulled into a false sense of security by the ship's grandeur. When disaster struck, class distinctions dictated survival. First-class passengers had better access to lifeboats, while lower decks were left to fend for themselves. It was a cruel hierarchy of life and death, driven by a system that valued status over humanity. The Titanic wasn't just a ship, it was a microcosm of society's flaws. And when it sank, it took with it the illusion of untouchable progress, leaving behind a cold, hard truth. The Titanic's plunge into the abyss was a symphony of chaos and terror. Picture the deck at 11:40 p.m. The iceberg, a ghostly monolith, looms out of the darkness, its impact shuddering through the ship like a death knell. The iceberg didn't just scrape the hull, it gored it, leaving a trail of destruction below the waterline. Steel plates buckled, rivets popped like gunshots in the night. Inside, passengers lurched from their beds, the sudden jolt turning a leisurely cruise into a nightmare. It was the moment when reality crashed through the facade of unsinkable. The command to assess the damage spread like wildfire. Down below, the watertight compartments were supposed to be the ship's savior. But here's the kicker, they were only watertight in name. The walls didn't reach high enough. As the sea poured in, it cascaded over the bulkheads, turning a few breached compartments into a fatal flood. The officers knew the score, the Titanic was doomed. But in the upper decks, the band played on, a macabre serenade to the ship's descent. Denial was the final act of arrogance, a desperate attempt to maintain order while the ocean claimed its prize. The order finally came. Women and children first. A noble sentiment, but in practice, it was chaos. Lifeboats, the last hope, were scarce and underfilled. Officers, paralyzed by the enormity of their failure, struggled to impose order. Captain Smith, once a figure of authority, now stood as a man defeated by his own hubris. His final futile maneuvers were drowned in the icy waters. As lifeboats drifted away, half empty, the reality set in. There would be no rescue for many left behind. The Titanic was a theater of despair, playing out its final act on the world stage. The ship's stern rose into the night sky, a monstrous silhouette against the stars. Passengers clung to the rails, their breath visible in the frigid air. The Titanic groaned and shuddered, its bulk tearing apart under the strain. In these final moments, human frailty was laid bare. Cries for help, prayers, and the bitter cold mingled in the air. The sea, indifferent to human folly, swallowed the Titanic whole, extinguishing the lights in one final, horrifying plunge. The unsinkable dream was now a watery grave, a testament to the dangers of unchecked ambition. Silence fell over the Atlantic, broken only by the distant cries of survivors. Those in the lifeboats watched in stunned disbelief, the weight of what they'd witnessed settling heavily on their shoulders. The Titanic sinking wasn't just a maritime disaster, it was a brutal lesson. Nature showed humanity its limits. The iceberg was the catalyst, but human arrogance was the true architect of tragedy. The world awoke to a new reality, where even the mightiest could fall. The Titanic's legacy was not one of triumph, but of caution, a reminder to respect the forces beyond our control. Let's cut through the debris of myths and memorials. The Titanic's sinking wasn't a mere accident of maritime history, it was a masterclass in human folly. The iceberg is framed as the villain, but it was the arrogance of the age that truly sent the ship to its watery grave. The Edwardian era was a time of unchecked confidence, where technology was king and nature an afterthought. The Titanic was a monument to this mindset, a floating palace built on the shaky foundation of human pride and fallibility. Peel back the layers, and what do you find? A series of decisions driven by ego and greed. Ismay's desperation to outshine rival Cunard Line, Smith's complacency on his farewell voyage, the builder's choice of subpar materials, all threads in a tapestry of disaster. The iceberg was the cherry on top of a sundae made of human error. This wasn't just about one ship hitting an iceberg, it was about an entire system crashing into its own limitations. The Titanic was a collective failure, a cautionary tale that exposed the hubris lurking in the heart of progress. Let's talk about that fateful night. A perfect storm of ignored warnings and blind trust in technology. The telegraph operators, overwhelmed and underinstructed, brushed off ice warnings as trivial. Captain Smith, lulled by the ship's supposed invincibility, took no serious precautions. As the iceberg loomed, the crew's lack of preparation was laid bare, a tragic testament to overconfidence. In those final, desperate hours, the Titanic's fate was sealed not by nature's hand, but by human hands that failed to heed the signs. That night was the night arrogance met its match. Now, the aftermath. The Titanic's sinking sent shockwaves through society, shaking the foundations of an age that thought it had mastered nature. The inquiry panels convened, eager to pin blame on individuals rather than confront systemic flaws. It was easier to scapegoat the iceberg than to admit the uncomfortable truth. The disaster was a byproduct of a culture that valued spectacle over safety. The public needed a villain, and nature was an easy target. But the real enemy was in the mirror, the same enemy that lurks in modern boardrooms and political halls, the unchecked ego. Here's the truth bombshell to take home. The Titanic story is our story. It's a reminder that beneath the veneer of progress lies the same old human flaws, ego, greed, and a dangerous disregard for warning signs. The fatal error? Believing that anything is invincible. The Titanic teaches us to question, to prepare, and to respect the forces beyond our control. In our own lives, we must guard against the blind spots of overconfidence, lest we too find ourselves sinking under the weight of our own hubris. The Titanic may be at the bottom of the sea, but its lessons float eternal. So, there you have it. The Titanic wasn't just undone by an iceberg. It was a casualty of human arrogance and systemic failure. We like our stories neat, with clear villains and heroes. But history isn't a fairy tale. It's a gritty noir novel where the darkest antagonist is often ourselves. The Titanic disaster was a mirror held up to society, revealing a distorted reflection of our own excesses and blind spots. Strip away the romance, and what you see is a tragedy written by human hands, one we're still writing today. As we sift through the wreckage of the past, remember, the Titanic story isn't just about a ship or an era, it's about us. It's a stark reminder that progress without caution is a dangerous game. That the choices we make today ripple through time, shaping the future in ways we can't always foresee. We build our own Titanics every day, in business, in politics, in technology, each with the same potential to sink if driven by unchecked ambition and ignorance. The real lesson? To navigate our world with eyes wide open, always questioning the course and the conditions. In the end, the Titanic is a cautionary tale as old as time, echoing with the same refrain: hubris leads to downfall. The players of the past, with their blind spots and bravado, are no different from today's leaders, engineers, and dreamers. The sea that swallowed the Titanic is the same one we all sail upon, metaphorically speaking. It's a reminder that nature doesn't play favorites, and that human constructs, no matter how grand, are fragile against the tides of reality. When we ignore this, we invite disaster into our own lives. What's the takeaway? In our personal and professional lives, we must balance ambition with foresight. Every decision is a potential iceberg, lurking beneath the surface of our awareness. To succeed, we must challenge our assumptions, prepare for the unexpected, and remember that no endeavor is unsinkable. The Titanic's ghost still haunts the corridors of power and innovation, whispering its warning to those who would listen. History may repeat itself, but we hold the power to change the narrative if we learn from its echoes. As you turn off this video and return to your life, remember the Titanic and the lessons it left in its wake. It's more than a story of tragedy, it's a mirror reflecting our own potential for both greatness and folly. The next time you find yourself navigating the icy waters of ambition, pause. Look for the icebergs lurking beneath the surface, hidden by the glimmer of progress and pride. Stay vigilant, stay humble, and remember that true strength lies not in believing you're unsinkable but in knowing how to navigate the storm. So how do we steer clear of our own Titanic moments? First, we must understand that every iceberg we encounter is a lesson waiting to be learned. In the world of business, technology, or personal life, the unseen dangers are often those of our own making. Complacency is the enemy. When success blinds us to reality, we risk sailing headlong into disaster. The solution? Cultivate a culture of curiosity and skepticism. Challenge assumptions and seek out the uncomfortable truths lurking beneath the surface. Next, let's talk about preparation. The Titanic sailed with lifeboats for half its passengers, a calculated risk that costs lives. In your own ventures, prepare for the worst even as you hope for the best. This means building redundancies, stress testing plans, and embracing flexibility. The unexpected will always happen. The question is, will you be ready? The Titanic's lesson is clear: overconfidence is a brittle shield. A well-prepared strategy is the lifeboat that can weather any storm. Another point: communication. The Titanic's fate was exacerbated by poor communication, both on the ship and with other vessels. In any endeavor, clarity and openness are key. Encourage an environment where voices can be heard, and warnings are taken seriously. Feedback is a lifeline, not a nuisance. Establish channels that allow information to flow freely and act on it swiftly. The iceberg warnings were ignored once. Don't let history repeat itself because of a communication breakdown. Consider the balance of speed and caution. The Titanic raced through icy waters, prioritizing a record-breaking journey over safety. In our fast-paced world, the pressure to achieve quickly is immense. But haste can blind us to hazards. Achieving balance means knowing when to push forward and when to slow down. Evaluate risks, act strategically, and remember that success is a marathon, not a sprint. The true measure of progress is not how fast you reach your destination, but how safely you navigate the journey. Finally, embrace humility. The Titanic's designers believed they had created something beyond failure. Such hubris is a pitfall. Recognize your limitations, acknowledge the power of unforeseen forces, and stay grounded. In every field, humility is a strength. It keeps you vigilant, adaptable, and open to learning. When you recognize that you are not invincible, you equip yourself to deal with challenges more effectively. The Titanic teaches us that pride precedes a fall, but humility paves the way for sustainable success. Let's talk reality check. The Titanic was a wake-up call from the icy depths, sounding alarms we still need to heed. Today's world is a high-wire act, teetering between progress and peril. Every innovation we champion, every leap forward we make, carries its own set of risks. Think of AI, climate change, global networks, our modern icebergs. We sail through these waters with the same hubris that built the Titanic, assuming control where none truly exists. The past whispers its warnings, and it's high time we listened. The digital age is our new ocean, vast and full of promise. But like the Titanic's journey, it's fraught with hidden dangers. Cybersecurity breaches, misinformation, AI ethics, icebergs in their own right, looming large and threatening. We're navigating this sea with a confidence that borders on arrogance, forgetting the lessons of the Titanic. Our digital lifeboats are scant and often overlooked until disaster strikes. To prevent sinking into digital chaos, we need foresight and preparedness at every turn. Then there's climate change, the iceberg of our age, an existential threat we prefer to ignore until it's too late. Like the Titanic, we're barreling toward it at full speed, driven by consumption and denial. The warnings are clear, echoing through melting ice caps and extreme weather events. Yet, much like those fateful telegraph messages, they're dismissed as inconvenient noise. The lesson from the Titanic is stark. Ignoring the warning signs can lead to irreversible consequences. In business and politics, the stakes are equally high. Decisions made in boardrooms today ripple outwards, shaping the world of tomorrow. CEOs and leaders, take note. The Titanic's sinking wasn't just a maritime disaster. It was a failure of leadership. The pressure to outperform competitors can drive reckless decisions. It's a race for profit over people, spectacle over substance. The real iceberg is the culture of short-sighted gains, ignoring the broader impact. The Titanic teaches us to steer clear of paths paved with unchecked ambition and ego. So, here's the deal. Let the Titanic be your cautionary tale. It's not just about what happened a century ago. It's about the choices we're making now. Every decision is a potential iceberg, every oversight a potential disaster. The unsinkable myth is just that, a myth. In reality, we're all navigating a sea of uncertainty. The key is to navigate wisely, respect the warnings, prepare for the unknown, and never let pride cloud your judgment. The Titanic story need not be ours, but only if we learn to see the icebergs before it's too late.